Good morning, everyone, and welcome to worship at the Congregational Church of San Mateo United Church of Christ. I'm so delighted to welcome each of you here this morning, whether you're in the sanctuary or worshiping with us online, whether you will be worshiping with us on Wednesdays in Spanish, whatever way you connect to this community, know that you are an integral part of this family of faith. We like to say each and every week that whoever you are and wherever you may be on life's journey, you are welcome here. And part of being a community together is knowing what is going on with one another. So one way, if you are in the sanctuary, an important way to do that is if you look in front of you, you should see some blue cards. Those blue cards are wonderful ways to share your contact information with us, share any prayer concerns, any needs, reach out in any way. Those cards can be placed in the basket as you leave the sanctuary. For those of you who are worshiping with us online, if you are on Facebook or YouTube, the chat is a great way to share your information, but also in the bulletin, you'll find the email addresses and phone numbers for all of us on staff, and we would be so delighted to hear from you, to get connected or to pray with you, support you in whatever way we can. I'm not sure if there's anyone today who is visiting or worshiping with us for the first time in the sanctuary, perhaps. If you are, please, yes, thank you, welcome. Let's welcome our visitors today. Thank you so much for being with us. We have just a little bit of information to share, and we do hope that you will get connected and find this such a warm and welcoming community. So welcome also this day, this beginning of Black History Month, this first Sunday as part of Lunar New Year, Year of the Tiger. May it be a blessed year for all of us. Welcome also in our first Sunday with Reverend Penny on sabbatical. Let's all hold Reverend Penny in our heart and in our prayers so that she may have a restful and renewing time away. Also wanted to share that Reverend Jorge, unfortunately, was having some car trouble this morning, so he won't be with us today, but he is certainly looking forward to being back with us soon. This is our second service in our Faith Beyond Boundaries and Borders series. We had a wonderful guest last week, Rabbi Jose. If you didn't get a chance to watch that service, the great thing about being online is you can go back. That was just such a powerful and inspiring message. And we have a wonderful lineup these next 4 weeks of wonderful speakers from all different faith traditions, different parts of the world, who themselves, in many cases, have crossed boundaries and borders, be they physical, geographical borders, spiritual borders, ideological borders. It's going to be a really wonderful series, so I encourage you to be with us for as much of it as you can. And that leads me to welcoming our guest today, Dr. Mahjabeen Dhala. Dr. Dhala is Assistant Professor of Islamic Studies and the Director of the Midrasha Program, a collaborative effort of the Center for Islamic Studies and the Center for Jewish Studies at the Graduate Theological Union. Dr. Dhala received her Master of Arts in Islamic Studies in 2017 and is part of the class of 2021 from the Graduate Theological Union's Department of Sacred Texts and Their Interpretation. Prior to these studies, she pursued traditional Islamic seminary studies for 7 years and has led Muslim communities worldwide, really, truly worldwide, for nearly 2 decades, and led numerous pilgrimages and retreats and all sorts of speaking engagements as well. Her interdisciplinary research features an integration of Islamic theological texts with feminist theories. In addition to these many, many achievements, I am so proud to say and so blessed that Dr. Dhala Mahjabeen is a good friend of mine. We had a class together, and since then we have taught together, we've written articles together, and really developed a wonderful friendship. So I'm so delighted to welcome her also into our community of faith today. So as we enter into this time of worship, I invite you with whatever is on your heart today to know that you are fully welcome, to know that you are loved, that you are valuable, that we are so delighted that you are here. And now please rise in body, mind, or spirit for our opening hymn, All Present, All Visible, Source of All Life.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to read for you a few lines from a supplication that is dedicated to a Imam of the 12 Holy Shias who, after witnessing the massacre of his family and being denied the pulpit, authored a set of supplications which are known as the Scroll of Sajjad, and this is supplication number 15 that I'm reading out for you. He would recite this when he would be unwell, but as I recite this now, I am just reciting it as verbatim because this is first person, but I'm intending for all of us to share the blessings of this prayer. O God, I praise you for the good health which lets me move about. And I also praise you when I am not well, because I do not know which of the two states should I be more grateful and thankful for. The time of health, with its delightful bounties and the joy to seek your pleasure through which you would strengthen me from your obedience, or the time of illness in which you test my gratitude, lighten the offenses that weigh me down, and give me the chance to repent after the evil I plunged myself into. O God, bless Muhammad and his household. O God, make me turn towards my challenges with love and ease. Let me emerge purified from residue of the evil that I have sent ahead. O God, let me find the sweetness of well-being. Let me taste the coolness of safety and security. Help me find a way from my illness through your pardon. Transform my infirmity into forbearance, my distress into tranquility, and my hardship into relief. For you are exceedingly beneficent, generously gracious, kind, generous, giver, possessor of majesty, and possessor of munificence. Amen.
Into green pastures, beside the still water, along the good paths, and through the dark valleys, all of my days, God's mercy follow. All of my days, God's love surrounds. All of my days, all of my days. Among my enemies, you call me to table your deepest blessing. My cup overflows. All of my days, God's mercy follows. All of my days, God's love surrounds. All of my days, all of my days. Always in God's heart, I shall be forever. Always in God's heart, I shall be forever.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Reverend Brian Cleary, and I'm from San Francisco Night Ministry, a ministry that you all have been supporting for over 16 years. We started out 57 years ago. A reverend saw a need to minister to the people without housing in San Francisco, and that's what launched San Francisco Night Ministry. Every night of the year, we have ministers walking the streets, offering a warm heart, a listening ear to those who are often neglected and forgotten in our society. We also run Bible studies on Tuesdays via Zoom right now. We have LGBTQ plus ministry, and we also have an open cathedral ministry, and that's my main role. Myself and Reverend Monique Ortiz, every Thursday we have a bilingual service at 16th and Mission, and thanks to churches like yourselves, we offer a meal. I know you guys do over 100 meals every month for the homeless in San Francisco, so thank you. So Thursdays we have a worship service where we have people come together, they offer up prayers, we sing songs, we have a Eucharist. And then every Sunday, which is where I'll go after this service today at the Civic Center in San Francisco, we have another worship service, and that's just in English. And we have prayers, music, sharing of community, and again, we offer meals. And it's thanks to churches like you that our ministry is able to thrive and provide services to those who are marginalized in our society. I started as a CPE student with San Francisco Night Ministry 2 years ago. That's clinical pastoral education. So if you're in seminary, I was at an Episcopal seminary, you have to do 1 credit of clinical pastoral education. And that's where I met Reverend Valerie from your church. And she trained me on how to walk the streets at night, how to slow down, and really listen to people and share the love of God with these people. And through CPE, I was able to become employed through San Francisco Night Ministry when I graduated in June of this past year. So thanks to you and the churches like that, we have seminarians who are able to, serve like Jesus out on the streets and not just immediately move into a congregational setting. Most of my members of my congregation on the streets would not be comfortable sitting in a space like this. They might have not showered for a week. They might want to have a cigarette during Mass. And those are all things you can do at Open Cathedral, but things you can't really do when you're inside a nice church in San Mateo. But that's what is so great about night ministry and the services we offered. My heart has been touched by all these people. Henry Nouwen, a famous theologian, worked with marginalized communities in his career, and he said it was the most life-changing experience he had. And I can say that for myself, too. I come from a privileged part of society, and I've always had everything I've needed in my life. And working with these people who have nothing, who have no community, often no family around them, they have the biggest hearts and the most caring souls, and they'd give you the shirt off their back if you needed it. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of San Francisco Night Ministry. I'll be going there this afternoon to spread the love of Christ and the love of God with all our brothers and sisters. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
The spoken word that you're about to listen to has been written by a student in Dallas, and her name is Naimal Fatima. These are few lines from her poetry called Zainab, the Power of Piety. Zainab was a woman who died in 685 of the Common Era, and she's the one who led a caravan of captives of women and children who were asserting the counter-narrative of the Ashura event. Here are a few lines of what Naim al-Fatima describes her as the power of piety.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I have a big problem, but no solution is in sight. I am a poet, and yet my pen doesn't have the might. For how can one write about a woman who in words can't be explained, whose personality in diction and syntax cannot be contained, who goes beyond the writer's ink and beyond the scholar's mind? She is uniquely singular, no one in front, adjacent, or behind. For she is Zainab, the noble sister of Al-Hussein. She is Zainab, who can only be understood by her titles and names. For no personality is more beautiful than the personality of Ali. But Zainab was his adornment, she exemplified his beauty. For his heart she was a source of comfort, paradise and bliss. She was his courage, valor, eloquence, and justice. And grace, poise, and chastity into her very being were stitched. She was the representative of Zahra, an exact mirror image. Modest yet fearless, bold and yet a jewel that is hidden. Her life, like her mother's, with difficulties were written. And she is the untaught scholar, the learned and wise, the continuation of Al-Hussein, who kept alive his sacrifice. Her home was the city of knowledge, and she had entered through its gate. Raised in the lap of the Panjatan, the greatest among the Ahlul Bayt. She was an encyclopedia of wisdom, patience, strength, and fortitude. One who taught through her submission the art of gratitude. Like the two blades of Dhul-Fiqar, she was sharp and fierce. The cold hearts of the people with her words she pierced. And through pain and loss, the path of purity, bravery, and truth, with excellence she navigated. With insight, tact, and brilliance she faced the trials which for her were fated. She carried the flag of Islam through a blinding darkness, bringing it into the light. She was like a lioness unleashed, never yielding in her fight. In the battlefield of Karbala, of positivity and good spirit, she was the upholder. And in Kufa and Sham, for the women she was a consoler. She was the companion of Hussein, the protector of Sajjad. Selfless, for she saw everything in the context of God.
What follows now are 3 verses of chapter 17 of the Quran. I will be invoking these 3 verses while I make a reference to them in my sermon that follows, but here are the 3 verses in Arabic.
من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليه وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. I seek God's refuge from the whisperings of the Satan, and I begin in the name of the all-munificent and the all-compassionate God. For the virtual audiences who just listened to the audio and have not had a chance to look at the bulletin, as for those who are worshiping here, I want to start my sermon by simply reading out a translation in English of the 3 verses that you heard in Arabic. These are verses 13, 14, and 15 of chapter 17, which is known as the chapter of the tribes of Israel. We have bound every human being's destiny to their neck, and on the day of judgment, we will bring forth to each person a record, which they will be laid open, and it will be said to them, read your record. You alone are sufficient this day to take account of yourself. Whoever chooses to be guided, it is only for their own good. And whoever chooses to stray, it is only for their own loss. No soul burdened with sin will bear the burden of another, and we would never punish a people until we have sent a messenger to warn them. It is a great blessing and honor for me to be sharing this space with you, and I'm so delighted that Reverend Cheryl Johnson asked me to be here today in this beautiful space. Cheryl and I have had the good fortune to study together, to teach together, to research and write together, and now to worship together. In the very few minutes that follow, and the short title that you've been given of this service is Preparing the Self and Society for a Just Life. I will be drawing upon these 3 verses that you just heard to make a case of how the Quran speaks to its adherents about the matter of justice, and how does human free will serve that goal of justice for all. Justice is something that is becoming so relevant to our societies. We're in a pandemic, and we keep praying that God will take us out of this pandemic with safety and security and good health. But not only has the world come face to face with a health crisis, but this crisis has also revealed so many layers of injustice within our system as well. So I thought it pertinent to talk about what faith has to say, and particularly the Islamic faith, about a just life. Muslim theologians started debating, having discussions, discourses about how is it that justice can be served to the people. There was a group of theologians who thought that we don't really possess any free will and everything is just destined out for us. We robotically live a life that has been written down for us, and fate rules everything. At a sharp contrast, and on the other extreme, were a group of theologians who later came to be known as the Adliya, meaning the people of justice, who argued that if I am to robotically just do what God has written down for me to do, then where is the wisdom of the day of judgment? Why will I be judged if I had no say in what I did? If I had no agency to make my own intention, if I had no agency to carry out my will, then why will I be subjected to a day of accountability? And what then is the meaning of heaven and hell if I have no choice in earning it or staying away from the punishment? This became a debate in the early 9th century. And today I'm going to share the view of the Adliya, the people of justice, and how they came to take a stand, which was a stand in between the two extreme schools of thought. One, the fatalistic view. We just can't do anything. It's all written down, and for us is to live it out. And the other extreme that said, God just created me, and then he just let me be. I am the master of my will, and there is total free will for me to do whatever I want. The point of view that I'm sharing with you was the point of view of a minority of theologians, and they were known as the 12er Shia. And they said that it can't be the two extremes. It can't be fate because of what we just spoke about. And it can't be total free will because God does not take a vacation. He is constantly in our lives. So it cannot be that I am left to do whatever I want. And it cannot be that I am being dictated in every move of my life. They came up with a middle path. And that was a path which said that I do have free will, but the cards that are played to me are not necessarily in my control. So there's a bit of both. I was born in the body of a woman of color, and I don't remember filling out a form of what sort of a body or which country or to what parents did I want to be born to. These were the cards played to me. But this is not going to decide my future. My future is going to be curated by whatever I decide, given the circumstances played out to me. So it's a bit of both. There is my will, and then there are those circumstances that are available to me. And I might not necessarily have a choice to choose those. They might just be dealt out to me. And I will be judged then based on what I chose to do with what God made available for me. And this is the middle path. The theologians invoked these 3 verses to point out 5 principles of life. And if these 5 principles of life were adapted and emulated, they argued, then we would be able to live a life of justice. Not just to ourselves, not just being just to ourselves, but also allowing a society of justice to emerge, consisting of individuals who know what it is to act justly. So the first principle that they argued for is the very beginning of verse number 13, saying that man's destiny or human being's destiny is bound to their own neck. So now they were not going to blame God for evil. They were not going to blame it on others. They were going to take responsibility. So this is the first principle that helps me curate a just life for myself. That whatever I do, I am bound by it. I cannot blame it on anyone else. This is the future that I created for myself, given the circumstances and given the freedom of choice. The second principle that they drew from here was that because I am free to choose, I am also being recorded. So that the freedom doesn't go to my head, there is a check post there saying, you have your vehicle, the road is in front of you, you can hit the rubber to the road, but remember, there is a radar. You're being watched and you're being recorded. So the second principle was, don't ever fly so high that you think that you have hidden your misdeeds. Because even if the eyes that you can see can be deceived, the eyes that see you can never be deceived. And you are being recorded. And because Muslims believe in a day of judgment, the verse then goes on to say that on that day, your record will be shown to you. It will be there. And you will be asked to judge yourself. So this is you, Mahjabeen. This is what you did with the cards that were played out to you. This is how you used your free will. Can you check the record for yourself? Have we missed anything? So this is a very significant, driving principle in Muslim life. They will not let us pass a week without reminding us in Friday sermons that we are being watched. So this is the second principle. The third principle. When you are choosing, when you are practicing this agency of free will, then know that you're not doing anyone favors if you choose to do something good. You're not doing anyone favors. You are helping your own soul develop in beauty. And if you are successful with that love and beauty, you will spread it and you will see its social impact. But don't be fooled, you are not doing anyone a favor. You are doing this for your grave, and you are doing this for your soul. So this third principle actually highlights that aspect of sincerity and humility. When you choose your free will, remember that you are the first person who is going to be impacted by that. So do what you do out of humility, and not so that you can enlist the favors you've done for so-and-so. So the verse goes on to say, if the soul chooses good, they choose so for their own benefit. And if they choose to do evil, then let them be mindful that they will be the first who are impacted by that evil. I will not be able to harm anyone to a level in which I will harm myself if I choose to do something wrong. If I carry out a misdeed to hurt someone, this verse reminds me, you will never hurt anyone more than you will hurt yourself. So this humanizing and internalizing of every intentionality is what is reminded in this verse. The fourth principle is that when I wake up in my grave to that record that has been so meticulously formulated for me, God makes it very clear, at least to the adherents of the Quran, that you will not be able to blame it on anyone. I will not be able to say, oh, so-and-so made me do this. Or it was because of that person's action that I reacted. Or it is because I was poor that I had to do this. Or because I was a woman that I had to resort to this. God says, no one will carry others' burdens. You will be accountable for what you chose. And I know sometimes that makes us feel, but I was compelled. We are compelled and coerced to do things. But isn't that what faith reminds us? Isn't that what believing in the prophets, believing in the saints, believing in those human beings who chose to do good even when everything around them was bad? Those who chose to follow the light, however flickering that might have been, in a landscape that was surrounded with darkness. Isn't that what God's agents taught us? And if I decide to be a person who adheres to God and to the scripture of God and to the agents of God, then I cannot be one of those who can blame the way I have turned out or the way my society has turned out to someone or something else. This principle also asks me or reminds me that inaction is not an option. I can't just see poverty and say, well, that's how it is. Or I can't just see inequity and say, well, that's too hard for them. I can't just perceive, witness injustice and say, if I could, I would. There is no blaming anything or anyone for our personal situations or our social situations, at least according to this verse. I will not be able to get up and say, oh, because I was in the United States, I couldn't do much for minorities. Or because I was in a majorly white country, I couldn't do much for the people of color. My faith will always keep reminding me that my book was full of examples of people who perpetuated justice in the face of all odds. So the blame game is not going to work. And the last principle here in these verses is God's justice, which is fair, I think, because God, you cannot ask me to live a life of justice against all odds, to shape myself, to shape my community, to shape my society, to be able to serve justice for one and all. You can't do this to me until you yourself are fair to me. Until you are just in what you do. You got to practice what you preach, God. And this fifth principle that the theologians used from this verse was iterating and affirming the notion of a just God. And this is just one of those aspects. Although the justice of God is a huge topic, intellectually debated for several centuries. But this last clause says, we never punish a people. Now, we here is the royal we, because Muslims believe that God is singular and unique and one alone. But the we pronoun is like a regal, royal kind of talking. We would never punish a group. We would never punish a people, this verse says, until we've sent them a messenger to warn them. Which means if I'm going to be held accountable, and if I'm going to be given a ticket for being bad, then that will only be justified if God has given me enough information to make my choices. He's given me enough knowledge to make calculated, moral choices for my life. And that information or knowledge for Muslims is their book and is the prophetic practice. And without this manual, and without the saints and the prophets who actually lived this manual, God would not have had an argument over me. If he would have penalized me for doing something wrong, I would have turned out and said, where was your job in educating me, God? Where was your justice in telling me how can this mandate be humanly acquired and accomplished? And that is why Muslims believe that on the day of judgment, God will parade his prophets and his saints and according to the Shia, the 12 holy imams, saying, find in them every deprived person, every silenced minority. They came from the unprivileged backgrounds of societies. They came from minorities, and yet they persisted in justice and equity. So for God to hold me responsible for a just self, living a life of justice, and a just society, these 5 principles play a huge part. For the last minute that I have left in this talk, I want to just interject one verse which was not given out to you. And that verse says, we will not change the state of a people until they change their states themselves. Where God reminds us that if we are sick of the injustice and the inequity around us, then prayer alone is not going to come to our rescue. Practice of justice has to be just as important as praying for justice. Thank you for having me in this beautiful space, for holding me with you in your thoughts as you pray for a better world, where everyone's world fits and where everyone can feel a sense of belonging. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mel and Angela and Linnell, for that beautiful, beautiful, I feel the peace of that song filling my heart. And thank you also so much to Mahjabeen for that wonderful talk. I always feel that my faith is so enriched by hearing perspectives coming from other texts, coming from other traditions. And I hope the same has been true for you. I feel that there's so much resonance in terms of the themes of justice and injustice in our world, and also what we can do as individuals if we have a great deal of privilege, or perhaps even if we don't. That strong call to justice, that strong call to responsibility. I feel so convicted by your words, and even more convicted knowing that you embody that message in your life, in your teaching, in your scholarship, in your faithfulness as a person. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much to Brian for sharing your work with the Night Ministry and for all that you do on behalf of the Night Ministry. Please know that the prayers of this community are with you as you go and you serve each and every week, each and every night. Please know that we want to be of support and in partnership with you and the Night Ministry, and so please do continue to let us know how we can better support you and the increasing needs and the increasing injustice that many are facing in San Francisco. Thank you to our videographers, our sound technicians, our musicians, our ushers, our volunteer custodian this morning. We've had so many hands and so many folks who have made our worship service today what it is. So thank you so much to each and every person for the ways that you serve God through serving this place. Please do take a look at the prayer list in the bulletin. Unfortunately, we are at a moment where that prayer list seems to be lengthening. So please do, in your own prayer practice, take a look at that list and do more than pray, to take action as well. See if you can support, if you can reach out, call someone, send a card. We are more deeply a community the more we connect, the more we know that we are shouldering those burdens of life together. Please do also be in touch. If there are prayer needs that we don't know about, we want to know about them so that we can truly be a community together. Finally, please do join us next week. I'll have another friend of mine, wonderful friend and colleague from Graduate Theological Union with us again, Kiana Lazenby. She's just a wonderful scholar looking at the intersection of Christianity, of African traditional religions, as well as injustice issues, particularly the prison system is a major focus of her research. So I know that's going to be a wonderful service, and I really do invite you to join us again in the room or online next Sunday. And now, as we conclude our worship, I invite you again to rise in body or spirit to sing God of Grace and God of Glory.
Crown your ancient truth.
Allow me to read a few verses, a few lines of prayer and blessings, which is usually recited by Muslims in the month of Ramadan, which is going to be upon us soon. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most beneficent, O God, give pleasure to the inhabitants of the graves, enrich the poor, satiate the hungry, provide clothes for the unclothed, help the indebted clear their debts, relieve those who are grieving, help the travelers reach home, release those unjustly imprisoned, help believers set their affairs right, heal those who are unwell, remove human deprivation through your divine influence and affluence, replace our ill manners with your beautiful traits, help us settle our debts and save us from poverty. Surely you have power over all things. Amen.
name is Cheryl Johnson, and I'm one of the ministers here at the Congregational Church of San Mateo. Today, I'd like to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for becoming a part of our community. We are so grateful to have you with us. Today, I would like to extend an invitation. That invitation is for you to move from the sidelines straight into our sightline. We'd love to get to know you better so that we can be church with you and be church for you. We want to know how to pray for you, how to support you, how to develop a church that will provide you the most meaningful and the most spiritually enriching opportunity that is possible. Also, church is not a spectator sport, but it's a two-way street. We want to also get to know the skills that you have, the time, the abilities, whatever you may have that might enrich and enliven our church community. Also, we'd like to invite you to consider becoming a monthly donor. That is another way that we pool our resources and be able to offer more together than we could ever do apart. So thank you so much for being part of our community already, and please do just take that next step, share your information, reach out so that we can really co-create and rebuild our lives together and our church together as we go forward boldly into the future.